Hello, can you hear me? Please bear with us. This is our first live show on USTREAM here. If you have any questions, please throw them into the chat box. Jessica is off to the side here. She'll be reading us some of the questions, and I also have a list on my laptop right in front of me of questions that we can answer. Right now we're doing a live broadcast, but we're also going to be recording this and having it shown on our website so that the people that missed it can go back and take a look. We'll be doing this once weekly, hopefully, if all goes well. We're starting it at 7 o'clock this evening. We may adjust the time as necessary to give people some time to get home from work, or maybe a little bit earlier so that they can spend some time on it while they're at work. But anyway, at the beginning here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the features on our OEM Hybrid DVR, as well as our brand new IPC1 series camera. I do have some samples here in the 3.6 millimeter fixed, and our brand new version with a varifocal 2.8 to 12 millimeter. So we'll start that right now. Like I said, if anybody has any questions that they want answered by myself or Jessica, any technical questions, basically anything outside of pricing, since this will be available to anybody. We'd like to keep away from actually having a discussion about price to protect our dealers, but any other technical question, or if there's any other models that you guys want to see, we can bring them out and put them on here in presentation. So at the beginning, what I'm going to do is go through some of the features of our OEM Hybrid DVR. Right now I have the 8-channel 960H version, which will allow you to do, on all analog, 8 channels at 30 frames per second D1. Actually, I'm sorry, 8 channels at 30 frames per second 960H, which is actually about 30% more than your standard D1. The 960H will allow you to record 700 TVL cameras at their maximum output. One of the downsides of having a D1 recorder is that the image kind of gets cropped a little bit because the D1 is in a letterbox format. 960H or 700 TVL is in a widescreen format, so you do get those extra pixels on either side. The 960H resolution stands for 960 pixels vertical by 480 horizontal, or the other way around. But anyway, it's 960 over 480. That's the full resolution, 700 TVL, and that's what this recorder can do in an all analog. We get a lot of questions regarding how to set it up into hybrid mode. So I'll go through it very quickly. It'll actually give you an option within the DVR settings on how you want to set it up. Inside the main menu, we're going to go into System and then Digital. We'll actually have a read-through or like an instruction manual that goes along with this DVR. We'll have a separate video in case you're having trouble seeing on the computer screen, but I'll just walk through it again very quickly. You can go into channel type. That's where it'll give you this menu. In channel type, you can choose 8 channels at 960H for analog, or if you wanted to, you could choose 8 channels at D1 for analog. Going into the hybrid mode, which the mode that we have it on right now, is 4 channels analog at D1 plus 1 channel 1080p IP camera plus 3 channels 720p IP camera. Another mode is to do it into strictly digital or IP cameras. So at that point, we're not using the hybrid anymore. We're basically using it as an NVR. You can do 16 channels at D1, 30 frames per second. You can also do 2 channels at 1080p at 30 frames per second, 2 channels at 720p, 30 frames per second, 2 plus 2. If you wanted to bring in maybe some 960H IP cameras, there are cameras that are out there that are 960H as an IP camera. So if you have those, you can actually do 1 channel at 1080p, 1 channel at 720p, and 6 channels at 960H. The very last setting is, like I said, for NVR only. It'll be 8 channels at 720p. So you could take this hybrid DVR, turn it into an NVR, and actually record 8 channels at 720p at 30 frames per second. So that's also a good choice in case maybe your customer or the person you're doing the installation for changes their mind. The nice thing about this, our OEM Hybrid DVR, is that you can use it with our OEM IP cameras. I did bring some here. We actually have a couple of them that are hooked up outside as well. I'm going to keep it on the hybrid mode now. So we have one channel using our ESC3N camera, which is our most popular model right now as far as analog. And we have 2 channels IP camera, one with varifocal and one with the 3.6 fix. So this is the image that's coming from our model IPC1. It comes in 2 different colors. We have it available in white. We also have it available in dark gray. It may look black, but it's actually like a gunmetal gray. Very similar, the same color as our ESC1 analog camera. If you guys have that, you'll notice it's the same exact color. A little bit about this camera. It's about the same size as the Dahua HFW 3200S. It's a little bit bigger than the HFW 2100, but it's very small differences. I'll have Jessica grab a HFW 2100, and we'll put it side by side. This thank you. This shield is adjustable, so that's one of the nice things. Is you can completely remove it if you want, but you can slide it back and forth, giving you the option of how much you want it to overhang. Now remember, if you hang it too far over, you'll catch a reflection in the infrared, so it depends on the angle how much you want to move that. I'll take the cover off so that we can compare it right next to the HFW 2100. So as far as lengthwise, it's about the same, a little bit longer. As far as the diameter, it definitely is a little bigger, but we did pack 48 infrared LEDs on there. So the HFW 2100 actually has a little less than half of that. Ours has the 3.6 millimeter lens in the center with a 48 infrared. Now those are on an 80 to 85 degree beam spread on the IR, so it'll give you a nice infrared along the whole picture, as opposed to a lot of models that put it right in the center and the outside of it doesn't get any infrared, so it's pretty useless. But we make sure that we use a wide degree of infrared on ours so that you can have that beam spread. So once again, lengthwise, diameter a little bit bigger, but when it's up 10, 12 feet on the house, you'll not notice a difference. But that was one of the things that we wanted to do, was keep it nice and small. So that's the white version. We have the gray one here as well. That's the, like I said, the gunmetal. Same thing, removable sun shield. You can move it forward and backwards. This bracket is pretty versatile. It has a 360 degree pivot point right at the bottom, 180 degree pivot point in the middle, and a 360 degree pivot point with the bracket. So it can be mounted horizontal on a wall or vertical underneath an eave. It gives you the versatility of doing that. Our model is actually underneath an eave as well, looking at the outside of the back of the loading dock. So that's the ESC1 IPC1. Now we just got a first production sample in. They should be starting to filter in now. The same type of design of the housing, just a little bit longer to accommodate a 2.8 to 12 millimeter lens. So this model is the IPC1-V. This will be up on our site very soon, since we are expecting our first delivery on it this week. It still has the removable sun shield, so you can move it forward and backward. It's a little bit longer, like I said, a little bit longer than the IPC1 non-varifocal, just because it's with the 2.8 to 12 millimeter lens. So the two bottom adjustments, that actually shows you how far the lens comes down. So we're squeezing those modules in there in the back. Both of these models are PoE. So the IPC1V, or the IPC1V is a PoE. This actually has a few less infrared just because of the 2.8 to 12 millimeter lens is a little wider. The regular IPC1 is PoE. So you can actually hook it up. If you do not have a PoE switch, then there is an optional 12 volt DC adapter on it. So you can hook it up to a 12 volt DC power supply or power adapter. And of course it has the Ethernet. So yeah, both of these are PoE. That was a good question. Let's take a look at some more of the menu on our hybrid DVR. What we try to do is stick with an easy design. As you know, our OEM DVR does have a little bit of different menu than the Doppler DVRs, but side by side they're very similar. So we'll go through some of the menu options just so you can see what type of features are available. We're proud of this system. You know, we've been working getting these DVRs and IP cameras to market for well over 6 months. So we're very excited to have them right now. We just got a question regarding the options for audio. There's a few answers to that because of the nature of the hybrid DVR. So on this particular model, the 8-channel 960H, for analog purposes only, there are 8 RCA inputs for audio on the back. It'll be kind of difficult to see, but you can see underneath where the video BNC inputs are, there's audio 1 through 8. So for an analog camera, if you're running a microphone separate, you can have audio on your 8 analog cameras. Now regarding the IP cameras, you know, as a manufacturer, we do have the opportunity to deviate from any of the configurations that you see here. So regarding the IPC1 or IPC1V, we are able to add audio to it. Like I said, I don't have any pricing available, but we do have the option of adding audio. Now, you don't need to run a microphone if you are doing audio because we can build it right into the camera. And as long as you're using one of our OEM DVRs, the audio will pass through from the camera to the DVR. Regarding two-way audio, I believe that's something that we can do. We haven't really tested it yet in the field, but two-way audio is becoming more and more popular, especially in higher-end residential or like a loading dock situation, because if you do want, you know, somebody to respond to what you're saying, a two-way audio would be the way to do that. So we'll look into that. We'll post some explanations either on our website or we'll make another video discussing that aspect of it. So let's see. There was another question that just came in. It said Doppler with a question mark. That would be this particular model, the HFW 2100. That is a Doppler model. We have them available by the carton, just as well as the DVR from Doppler. On our website, it's differentiated as DH DVR or DH IP camera. So if you're looking for Doppler, then you know, you can go ahead and take a look at the cartons. That pricing is coming direct from Doppler as a level 2 distributor. We're selling by carton only, and then the people that are buying the cartons and reselling, those will be at the retail level. So that's the situation with the Doppler. So the HFW is a Doppler camera. The reason why I brought it out is to show you the size difference between the Doppler HFW 2100 and our model, our OEM model, the IPC1. Now, since the IPC1 is an OEM IP camera, standing for Original Equipment Manufacturer, that's us. We're the manufacturer. So we're assembling and producing this camera. We're responsible for, our engineers are responsible for the firmware. Our engineers are responsible for any upgrades we want to have to the firmware. The firmware is available. It's not a secret. It's uploaded on our website to our dealers, and they can download it at any time. So our firmware is open to our dealers, and even to the public. If somebody were to have one of these systems installed and wanted to do a firmware upgrade outside of their installer, as long as they're somewhat understand the risks in doing firmware upgrades, we can send them the firmware directly. We'd much rather send it to your installer, but if you need a firmware upgrade, if you're an end user and you bought some of our equipment, we'll be more than happy to provide it to you. So that's another big difference regarding the firmware, because on the DVR side, the firmware is actually distributed from the dealer only. It's not distributed from DVR. So the DVR has to send us the firmware first. We need to test it, make sure there isn't any bugs, and then we distribute it to our dealers. We're not allowed to distribute the firmware directly to the end user, just to answer that question. There was another question somebody had before on the phone regarding the lens configuration. Now this particular camera, the IPC1, not the IPC-V, because the IPC1V is a varifocal, but the IPC1, that's fixed lens, 3.6 is the minimum lens that we can put into it. Anything lower, like a 3 or 2.8 or 2.9, you're going to catch the hood, plus you're going to catch the infrared at nighttime, so it'll be, it's too much of a wide angle. So, but we can do 3.6, 4 millimeter, 6 millimeter, 8 millimeter, I believe even 12 we've tested up to. And we can do that configuration from the factory, or we can send you the lens. It's very easy to replace this lens. One of the things that we worked on was designing a case that was easy to have the internals be accessible. So the end of the camera just unscrews, and the cover with the glass will come away. So you have access to the lens immediately within 6 rotations, and you have access to the camera. So that's another big difference, because with the DVR model, the HFW2100, it voids the warranty if you change the lens. A lot of people have been going that route, especially with the QC special. There was like 2 cameras for like $1 on Costco. So a lot of people took advantage of that, but those cameras came with a 6 millimeter lens. So they were very, very narrow focal length. The 3.6 that we sell gives you a nice wider field of view. I think it's like 70 or 80 degrees. But it's very difficult to replace the lens, even if you do decide to void the warranty. So that's another big difference between our camera and their camera. The questions are coming in kind of quickly, so I'll go through them really quick. The IPC1 and IPC1V is a 1.3 megapixel camera on widescreen. It's 720p resolution. So it's 720p. So when we're looking at our OEM DVR and NVR, and if we were to change this to all digital, then we could do 8 channels at 720p. So you could have 8 of our IPC1 cameras at 720p on our recorder at 30 frames per second. So that deals with the question regarding megapixel. We do have a 2 megapixel module available. It is a little bit more. Once we release all the models that we're going to have for the 1.3 megapixel or 720p, then we'll start bringing some more in at a 2 megapixel or 1080p. So we'll continue to release new IP cameras throughout the summer, even going into the fall. We should have about a dozen models available within the next 60 days. So that deals with the problem, with the question of megapixel. Somebody wrote, are you assembling it, or is someone in China? We actually have our own factory in Shenzhen, China. I'm over there a lot. So when I'm sure those dealers that deal with us know that I'm away. Jessica does a great job when I'm away dealing with the factory. We're doing the assembly ourselves. We're collecting all the raw material and making sure that we put together the product the way that we want to. So anytime you deal with a product overseas, even if it's China, Japan, Taiwan, the most important thing to deal with is the quality control, because anybody can assemble, but are they testing it? Is it getting tested once it lands in the U.S.? Those are things that we have control over. So we have control over the quality control of our factory, as well as when it comes to our warehouse in New York or North Carolina, then we can take care of that. So those are one of the things that we're proud about, that we use 2 megapixel lenses on all of our analog cameras and our IP cameras. We make sure that we have the finest material, especially the IP66 rated housings. A lot of times people say they're IP66, but they get water inside. A perfect example is the Lorex deal that everyone made a big fuss about earlier this year. There's a lot of complaints with that model with getting condensation inside. So, that's another thing that you got to keep, be wary of is the IP66 rating true? It has been tested. With our models, it has been. So that'll answer the question of who's assembling it. Let's see here. Does the HFW 2100 have enough space directly? Directly behind the plate to hide the RJ45 jack, installing it outdoor on a brick house. Great question. It does not. Actually, there's not a single IP camera that I know of that has a electrical junction box built in. So this is what the back of the HFW 2100 looks like. It's cable through the bracket, and you've got a good 18 inches of cable, with the RJ45 and 12-volt DC power adapter on the back. So there's quite a bit of cable. You're going to need at least a 1-gain junction box to fit all that in. So typically what we do, because there are a branch of our company, there are installers that we have contracts with some bigger companies that we actually do installations. What I've seen us do with this particular type of camera is get a 1-gang electrical box at Home Depot or Lowe's, waterproof electrical box. Drill the center of the cover out so you can pass the RJ45 and 12-volt DC pigtail through. Now, this RJ45 pigtail is big, so you're going to need an inch and a quarter drill to drill through the cover. So, but once you do that, you pass the wires through the cover. The camera sits on top of the cover, and the wire goes inside the electrical junction box. So that's typically what we do with this style camera. The same is true for ours. Our cable is a little bit less, maybe 3 or 4 inches smaller, but still, you got to deal with that RJ45. So anytime you're mounting it, the hole's got to be at least an inch and a quarter, because it's not going to make it through. So we can do the same thing with this. On our base is a little bit wider than, in diameter than the HFW 2100. So we may recommend a 2-gang junction box for this, just for that reason, so that it fits on top of the cover. That was a good question. Let's see here. Can you show a sample image from the IP camera? Yep, as a matter of fact, it's out there right now. This is our demo system that we have available. We can send, if you have a request for the IP address, we can give you the IP address so that you look at the web interface. Like I said, we got the first 4 cameras are analog. So this is our ESC3N camera, analog. We don't have any hooked up right now as far as analog in the next 3. And these are our 2 IP cameras. The first one was our first series with the Aptina plus TI. All of our new IP cameras were doing Aptina plus HI silicon, which gives you a better picture. So that's where all of our new cameras are going. As you can see, the motion's fluid. This is a live feed from outside, so you can see when the cars are traveling down the road. It's not jittery; they're very smooth. It's 30 frames a second. So that's what you get with 30 frames a second. A lot of other NVRs, as you add more cameras, you have to reduce the frame rate. On ours, it's 30 frames per second, so you don't have to worry about doing that. We got a question about the extra stream on the OEM DVR. That's a very good question. It's, like I said, it's a hybrid DVR, so you have 2 ways to set the extra stream. When you're dealing with the analog cameras, the extra stream is dictated from the DVR with the analog cameras. With the IP cameras, there's no way to change the extra stream using the DVR. You must log into our IP camera directly to change the extra stream on there. So on our IP camera, you can change the extra stream to D1 on the IP camera, and it'll transfer through the DVR as D1 maximum resolution for the IP camera. On the analog cameras, we can change it to SIF resolution. So if you're recording in D1 it'll be at SIF resolution. So when you're viewing it remotely, that's what you're looking at. You have the option for SIF or QSIF. So most DVRs that record, the analog records at D1, then you're going to get SIF resolution. And you can set the extra stream from anything from 7 frames a second all the way up to 30. And you can change the bit rate higher or lower depending on mostly your upload speed, because the extra stream is what you're mostly going to be viewing on a mobile phone or your laptop over the internet. So it's not recommended to have your mainstream always viewing on your mobile phone or on your laptop, because it's taking up too much bandwidth. So what we normally do is set the extra stream at SIF for analog and at D1 for IP cameras, and that'll pass the extra stream through. It'll give you a lot more fluid motion, and it doesn't eat up your bandwidth. I mean, most of the time you're going to be restricted by the upload bandwidth at the facility. Your ISP is going to limit your upload bandwidth. Most of the time for a business account, it could be anywhere between 1 megabit per second up to maybe 3, if you're lucky 5. There are some areas that have fiber, like Verizon fiber or AT&T fiber, or even Time Warner now has a package. I think it's 100 megabits per second over 20. The more megabits you have upload speed, the better you're going to have for your remote viewing. It's as simple as that. Let's see here. 2 cameras for $1. That was a joke. We do have. It's funny because there's a lot of competition out there, and I make a joke: 2 cameras for $1 at Costco. I think in reality, they were 2 for $300. So they were about $150 each, and that was at a time where Dahua was telling vendors that we had to sell it at $200 or $250. So it's a joke. There was never 2 cameras for $1. But it's sometimes it seems that way with the amount of competition, especially with these 1.3 and 2 megapixel cameras. It seems like every week there's a new deal at Costco or Sam's Club or wherever these places have. But typically we see them for like a month, they sell out, and then there's something new. So it's inconsistent. What we try to work with is our dealers and our installers. We try to get them a consistent quality product that they can use for a long time. So we'll continue to have these models for the foreseeable future. To the end of this year, early next year, we may upgrade some of them to 2 megapixel when the time comes if the 1.3s aren't selling. But that's what we're here. We're not here to sell you 2 cameras on special and never sell them again. We're here to sell you the same product, same quality, the same 2-year warranty for our installers. That's what we're here for. So that's the question to that. The answer to the question: 2 cameras for $1. Somebody wrote 3.6 is an 80-degree lens. It depends on the lens, and is it a 1/4-inch CMOS lens or a sensor, or is it a 1/3-inch CCD sensor? So that plays a role in the amount of degree that the lens has. But I'd say that's accurate. 80 degrees. It's in the ballpark, depending, running back and forth. Let's see here. I purchased some of the older model bullet cameras and had trouble with halo at night. To adjust the focus, to reduce it. Has this been addressed in newer models? Actually, that's a very good question. What the person is referring to is on the varifocal camera, when it's adjusted to 2.8 millimeter, the angle is very wide, almost 100-degree field of view. So what sometimes happens at night, if it's close to a building or if there's something else that nearby that is reflecting the light, for example, if the 2.8 millimeter is 100 degrees and you're putting the camera underneath an eave, although the eave might not be in the picture, it's still reflecting the infrared because the beam spread is so wide. So the way to eliminate that is to decrease your field of view or move the camera away from the area where the infrared is getting reflected. But there is something else that we're doing now that we've just started to do in our ESC1N camera, ESC3N camera, ESC4N camera, and our FEOP models. The ESC1 FEOP, the ESC3 FEOP, and the ESC4 FEOP is we are positioning the lens closer to the glass. So that way there's the glass pretty much ends right where the lens cover is. So one of the benefits of doing that is it eliminates a lot of that infrared halo at night. We've tested it recently, and we haven't come across a single camera, even at 2.8, that has the halo. So we are positioning the lens closer to the lens cover, as directed by our technicians, our end users, our installers. So that's a very good question. Let's see here. We have a question that says, you install, where are you based out of? I mean, our main warehouse is in North Carolina, but we have contracts with certain companies. So when a company opens up a new facility, we'll get flown out there to consult with the property owner or the business entrepreneur, etc. And we'll bring in the equipment. We'll have a local electrician run all the wiring, and then we'll come in and terminate the wiring, adjust all the camera angles, etc. So sometimes we're out doing installations too, especially in the summertime, which is, as all of our installers know, summertime obviously is the prime time for doing your installations. And a lot of our installers now are getting 3 or 4 systems all at the same time because they have installations every day of the week. That's what we like to see. So all you installers out there that are putting our stuff in, thank you, and we look forward to working with you for the forever. So keep us in mind on your next job. Let's see here. Somebody asked, will you guys be posting this video? That's a good question. We're recording it. This video, hopefully, will, this is our first USTREAM broadcast, so we are recording it as well as broadcasting it live. Hopefully the video will make it to the USTREAM page, and we may be able to upload it to YouTube or send it to people. Hopefully it'll stay on the USTREAM page. That's what we're hoping. So if you missed the first 15 minutes, we'll have it available. Let's see here. What about the ESC3? Does the dome have space to hide the wire? In my scenario, the junction box is not possible. The owner of the new house does not want the box sticking out from the outer wall. I mean, that's a tough situation because I'll have Jessica grab an ESC3N, and we'll take a look at that camera. Now, for those of you that don't know the model ESC3N, that is a analog camera, 700 TVL. It has a Sony Superhead CCD2, the newest CCD available from Sony, and it is available with a 2.8 to 12 millimeter lens. So that lens is the same lens that we use in our IP cameras. It's a 2 megapixel IR corrected lens, 2.8 to 12 millimeter. And to reinforce what we were saying before, we are bringing the lens directly to the glass lens cover, so it's eliminating that halo that sometimes will occur when you're near other objects. So this is the ESC3N. Like I said, analog camera, 2.8 to 12 millimeter lens, 36 infrared LEDs, zoom and focus from the outside, and there are two adjustments on either side. You would loosen up these screws to give the camera some room to maneuver, and there's 2 mounting holes on the top and the bottom. So this is what the camera looks behind. So it does come out, the cable comes out from the back of the dome, and this cable is a little bit longer than the IP cameras just because sometimes you don't know with the analog cameras how far you're going to be away from a junction box. So this is the amount of cable. Now you will need a 2-gang electrical box to put this wire in. So to answer your question, there's really no way that you're going to be able to mount this externally on brick without a junction box. The only thing that I can think of just off the top of my head right now is eliminating the on-screen display toggle. This does add some width to the cable. We can manufacture any of our analog models without the OSD, and that way you don't have to worry about drilling such a big hole you may be able to drill through the brick, pass the wire through to the other side, and maybe put a box on the inside so it's not outside. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of, but you know, that's our model ESC3N camera. That's actually what's showing outside right now. And we have it close to the 2.8 millimeter setting. You know, we're getting a nice field of view there. So that's the ESC3N. Somebody asked about that. Hopefully I answered your question. Keep in mind that the USTREAM is on like a 2-minute to 3-minute delay. So, and also I'm, you know, halfway down the page. I haven't got to all the questions yet. Let's see here. There's no documentation on your website to show how much space behind the wall plate to hide wires. There's really no documentation available. I mean, typically we utilize 1 gang and 2 gang electrical boxes. That's pretty much the industry standard. We can special order housings that have a optional extended base. I'll have Jessica bring me out one of those extended bases, and I'll show you what we're referring to. This is available on only a specific type of analog housing. So this is a different manufacturer housings that we normally go with. So this design, I wouldn't say it's patented, but it's very difficult to copy. So this is what one of the extended bases look like. As you can see, it's the type of camera that you need has a round base, not a base like the ESC3. And then it has a 1/2-inch EMT conduit plug on the side and on either side. So you can run conduit directly to the base, and the camera will fit over this junction box. Like I said, this is made for a very specific type of camera. It's available in the 36 infrared varifocal as well as the 24 infrared fixed. So that's what we have available for that particular instance. This particular junction box is 1.25 inches deep, so it adds a little bit of depth to the base of the camera. Here you go, thanks. Okay, I think we already showed the back of the ESC3. If you need it shown again, just let me know. Will your OEM NVR and IP camera support input-out connections such as PIR sensors, etc.? And certain models, yes. Now, what gets tricky with it is the amount of IC boards needed to complete that set. So what we have on our IPC1 and IPC1V is our custom designed IP module that is very thin. So that way, you know, because the lens comes down to a certain amount, so there's only like 1 inch left of space back there to put the IP module in. So on certain models we can offer like the audio module, the SD card module, the input-output alarm module. So that's available on certain models. The camera can't be too small because for every additional feature, there's an extra module that's required. So they're just all pancaked on top of each other. So that's why sometimes it's hard with these housings. This is a custom design module. For some of the other housings, we can do that. So mostly bullet housings because they're longer. But yeah, input-output is no problem. PIR, audio, input-output, SD card, you name it. We can put it together. Now, typically with an order like that, there's an MOQ, minimum order requirement, because when we buy the material from our suppliers, they're not selling it us at like 1 or 2 pieces. Most of the time they're 10 or 12 pieces MOQ for us, so that's what we have to set the MOQ as. But if you have any questions, you know, you can call us or email us. It's completely fine. Somebody asked, what is better, FEO or Superhead? Those are actually 2 different types of technology. The FEO is referred to as the DSP, or digital signal processor. That's the computer behind what processes the image. What produces the image is the image sensor, which in our cases is a third inch Sony Superhead CCD sensor. So the CCD accepts the image from wherever the camera is pointing and sends it to the DSP, The DSP is what processes that image, which gives you the on-screen display, which gives you the smart IR, which gives you those features. So there are two different types of technology. It just so happens to be that Sony makes FEO and Sony makes the Superhead. We're at the Superhead CCD2 now. If you have any questions regarding the Sony FEO, you can actually go to Google, type in Sony FEO, and the first page is the page from Sony. So you can view all the different technologies right on Sony's page. FEO actually has 3 different types of chips. So there's Sony, well, let's say there's 4 because there is one that's retired. There's the Sony FEO-E, which was the first FEO that we started to sell about 2 or 3 years ago. That FEO-E is actually retired. It got replaced by the Sony Enhanced FEO-E, which gives you a few more features like a digital WDR or ATR in that aspect, and some 2D noise reduction. In the middle, there's Sony FEO-S, which is in the middle. It's not a WDR chip, but it does give you 3D noise reduction and a couple other features that are available on the FEO-P. The FEO-P is the top-of-the-line Sony chip. It's a WDR, a true wide dynamic range sensor, or I'm sorry, DSP, and it's the best WDR image that's out there. So if you need a camera with WDR, do not buy anything that's not Sony FEO-P, because that's where you're getting the best picture. I mean, a lot of times people mention Pixum WDR sensor. Not the same. That's a CMOS. So right off the bat, you're not getting the same image quality as you would with a CCD. And there are some other cameras that are available that have what's called a digital WDR, which is exactly that. It's not a true dual scan WDR. It's a digital WDR. It's not the same. Sometimes they come very close. Like, for example, our N-series cameras have a digital WDR. Like I said, it's not the same as a regular, but it works pretty close. So if you're installing some of these N-series cameras in restaurants or jewelry stores or a person's house next to the front door, that digital WDR may work or may not, but if you know for certain, if you got a loading dock that you're shooting out of, or inside the outside, outside the inside, really big overhang, a lot of shadows during the day, get that FEO-P chip. You won't be sorry. It is a lot more, sometimes almost double what the regular 700 TVL camera is, but you installers know if you need WDR, you're going to buy a Sony FEO-P. Let's see here. There was a question, how much more quality are you getting from a 700 TVL to a 1.3 or 2 megapixel? That's a good question, because right now, especially with our OEM, DVRs, hybrids, OEM NVRs, OEM IP cameras, the prices have come down considerably. I mean, we have the IPC1 available, let's say it's less than what people were paying for Doppler. So it's very affordable. It's in the same price range as the FEO-P cameras, to be honest. And you are getting about double the resolution. So let's say if your standard 700 TVL, or the 960H 700 TVL cameras going to a 1.3 megapixel, you may be at like 11 or 1200 or 1300 TVL. I know it doesn't exactly match up that way, but just for discussion purposes, you're looking at almost double for the resolution on a 1.3 megapixel, and definitely more than double on a 2 megapixel. So it all depends on the budget, because obviously 1.3 megapixel or 720p is the entry-level megapixel camera. But if you're debating, if you're an installer and you're debating between analog and IP, now there's very little difference between the prices of the two. So I mean, if you were going to buy 8 FEO-P cameras, you'd be in the same ballpark for 8 IPC1s. So the price has come down significantly, and we're very comfortable with the pricing that we have on our OEM IP cameras. I think that as more and more people get turned on to them, and as we integrate more features and have features added to our software via firmware upgrades, that people will really start to jump behind them. They are brand new, so we are selling a lot of them, but there are still people that are using other products like Hikvision, Daqua, Axis. They're out there. So it all depends on your installation. There are some jobs where you got to keep that bid low because it's competitive, especially in bigger cities. I mean, we started in New York. We'd bid a job and have 10 other people come. So the installers, they have a really rough time sometimes getting these jobs because the person's looking at the bottom of the page and saying your bid is more than somebody else's, so you're not getting it. So in those big markets, New York, New Jersey, Miami, Texas, California, our dealers and installers are out there and they're fighting tooth and nail every day for these jobs. So anytime we can come in with something that's a little bit lower, that's good quality that they can pitch to their client, they get more jobs. So that's what we're here for. We're here for the installer. That's who we are, where we started from, and that's our main customer base is installers. So that does bring me to the registered installers list. If you're viewing this and you have a company that, maybe it's a computer company that you're just starting to do cameras or IP cameras, if you're electrical contractor that's just starting to do security cameras, or if you've been doing security cameras for 10 years and you need a partner that you can trust, let us know. We'll add you to that site. We'll recommend people in your area to go to you. Plus you get the 2-year warranty on all of our products. So the registered installer program works out in your favor. And just so everybody else knows too, any order on our website that's over $999, so $1,000 and up, gets free UPS ground shipping. In most cases, these cameras are heavy, especially the bullet cameras. They weigh a couple pounds each, and you could save $30, $40, $50 on the shipping cost. So that a little bit into the registered installer program. If you have any questions, let us know. Let's see here. Some more questions. Can you sell me the junction box alone? That's a possibility, yes, but it needs to match up with the camera. So if your camera doesn't have the same diameter base as the junction box, it's not going to work. If you have any questions, email us or call us about that. We do sell the boxes separate. What VMS do you recommend? The VMS, so far we've tested our OEM cameras with programs like Milestone, Blue Iris, and they work very well. I'm very satisfied with the support that we get from Blue Iris. Their community support is second to none. I mean, if you guys ever get a chance and you want to really get involved with a community of people that are extremely technical but are still home users, go to the website cam-it.org. It's camit.org, cam-it.org. Shout out to everybody on the site. Thanks for all your support over the last few years. Well, I guess year or two. We look forward to keeping our connections with Blue Iris because it's a fantastic program. It's very affordable. You don't have to pay multiple licensing. It has a ton of features. So if you're a homeowner or small business owner that wants a nice VMS program for let's say it's less than half of what like a regular license is for a Vigilon or something like that, please check out Blue Iris. The gentleman in charge of the Blue Iris program is extremely professional. We've had really good luck with their product. So shout out to Camit and Blue Iris and all the guys on there. We appreciate your business. So that's a little bit into the VMS. They said, what VMS do you recommend? I don't want to use an NVR. The IP cameras do have the option for FTP. So if you want to set up an FTP, you can do that. Or we can add a SD card into the IP camera, whatever size you need. Let's see here. What if we purchase cameras from you? Do you have junction boxes for your cameras? Like I said, only for specific models. So for not every model will have that type of junction box. Is it possible to direct wire the HFW2100 to get rid of the bulky RJ45 female port? Absolutely not. Please do not splice the wire. That's really all I can say. A, avoids the warranty, and B, your reliability goes out the window. So definitely not recommended. Somebody wrote, too many trunk slammers, licensed and bonded only. In layman's terms, basically what that person is referring to is there are people that are installing security systems without a license. That's definitely not recommended because basically you're at the mercy of the installers in your area. So if you're submitting a bid and you're not licensed, but the 2 or 3 other people that are submitting the same bid are, it'd be very easy for them to pick up the phone and call the local licensing board and say, this person's doing a job that we lost to that doesn't have a license. So, I understand how some people use the word trunk slammer as somebody that's just doing it at the back of the van. There's not a permanent place of business. They're doing jobs for half of what a professional job would do. We agree as far as that goes. If you are an end user, please know that all of our registered installers have been vetted properly. You can give them a call without a problem. Somebody just wrote, how often will the OEM DVR be updated to add features? Right now, we're updating it frequently because we are continually adding features and improving the performance. So we're adding new firmware maybe once a month, as it is right now. As the software matures and people are satisfied with the let's say the final product, then we'll go from an upgrade cycle of maybe once a month to once every 3 months to once every 6 months. It's very similar. I feel like DAPLA has that policy also. When a new model comes out, they're upgrading firmware like every 6 hours. A joke again. They're upgrading firmware once a month at when the model first comes out, and then every 3 months, and then maybe an upgrade after a year, but that's it. I mean, once the software gets to the point where they're happy, they'll stop sending firmware to their dealers. We'll continue to add features every month, then 3 months, 6 months, and then we'll probably, after a year, we'll probably replace it with a different model. Somebody wrote, is it possible to direct wire BNC cameras? I'll have the same answer. Don't chop that cord up because, if something does go wrong, it voids the warranty. Just get a bigger drill bit. If you're debating between, chopping the wire up, just let us know. We'll sell you the analog camera without the OSD menu. 99% of the time, the defaults are fine. So if you want to purchase a camera without the OSD menu, and you can reduce the size of your hole from 1 inch to maybe 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch if you're drilling directly through and you want to pass the wire through. So that's the answer. Somebody asked us about, do you sell the DVR that has 8 PoE ports? I don't know if they're referring to the new DAPLA model, but we are selling the brand new DAPLA 5208 and 5216 horizontal NVRs, of course in carton pricing. So this is in carton pricing. It's a DAPLA model in carton pricing. They do have our order for the 32 channel, 5.2, I think it's going to be 3.2 model. All 3 of those models are without PoE ports. Later on this summer, we will release the 5208, 5216, and I guess 5232 with 8 PoE ports. So, the only time that really makes sense is maybe on the 8 channel, because if you have an 8 channel NVR and 8 PoE ports, it makes perfect sense. But if you're getting a 16 channel or a 32 channel DAPLA and it only has 8 PoE, if you want to add 9 or more cameras, it doesn't make any sense. Our strongest recommendation is to buy NVRs without PoE and get a managed PoE switch. It's a little bit more money, but it's worth it in the long run. Because if you're doing installations, you can set that managed PoE switch up over the internet. If a camera gets froze up or needs to get reset, you can log into the switch and reset that camera remotely. With those unmanaged switches, you're at the mercy of unplugging it and plugging it back in. So we highly recommend managed switches. Netgear has some really nice ones. Of course, Cisco. So take a look on Newegg and look for managed PoE switches. Let's see here. How do we obtain updates for OEM DVR? If you're part of our installer database, there's an FTP site. We also have other companies' firmwares on our FTP site, we're going to be uploading all of the newest firmware directly to the product page of that particular product. So the IPC1, the IPC1V, all the newer model IPCs, we're going to have the firmware available on the site, on our EmpireSecurityCameras.com website. Same thing with the hybrid and NVRs. That should be completed by this weekend. So we'll have the firmware updates open for everybody direct from the website. You can check that out. Somebody said I had a problem with an ESC4 where the OSD menu pops up without anybody pressing the button. Sometimes that'll happen. I mean, there could be a problem with the camera. If there is, you know, we have RMA. We can send you a new one. Please take advantage of that. But sometimes we have RMA cameras, and the replacement camera does the same thing because there's a problem with the power supply. It's a phenomenon that happens once in a while with certain power supplies if they're going bad, where, you know, the IC chip for the analog cameras is a single board. It has power on one side, power and video on one side, and OSD on the other. So everything is very close together. If you're getting voltage spikes, the camera could turn that voltage spike into turning the OSD menu on. So the first thing we would ask you to do is bring the camera into a closed environment and hook it up to a separate power supply. If it's not doing the same thing, then you know, replace your power supply. But if it is, please, you know, contact us. We'll get you out a new camera immediately. Let's see here. Any recommendations on true 4-8 and 16-channel PoE? Not using one of the PoE ports to connect the switch together. Yes, like I said, Netgear. I mean, I'm going to take a look at Newegg right now. We'll check out one of the models that we tend to use. Just bear with me for one moment. Let's see here, Netgear. I mean, I'm using Newegg, but you know, I've seen this model, the PoE, available at like Micro Center and CompUSA if you're in a location that has those stores. But Newegg, Amazon, sometimes people have different websites that they can use. Okay, here it is. Netgear 24 port, 10100 PoE smart switch with 2 gigabit and 2 combo ports. Model number F as in Frank, S as in Sam, 728, T as in Tom, P as in Peter. FS 728TP. The nice thing about that is it's a managed switch. They call it a smart switch. But another benefit of that is while the PoE ports are 10100, which means that the camera that is attached to PoE is going to be 10100. So you'll have a maximum of 100 megabits per second between the PoE port and your IP camera. That's not a problem because, you know, at the master stream you're looking at 6 or 8 megabits per second, so you don't have to worry about that. But when you get 12 cameras into that PoE switch and you want to connect the PoE switch to your NVR and the PoE switch to your ISP, you need gigabit. You're not going to make it with 12 cameras on a 10100, not by any means. It'll be the biggest bottleneck and it'll be awful. Get a PoE switch with 10100, 1000 ports for the extra 2 ports that you need. It doesn't matter on the PoE ports, most of them are 10100 anyway. I mean, you could spend $2,000 on a PoE switch and still not get, you know, gigabit PoE ports. So get a managed PoE switch that has gigabit going. It has to have at least 2 gigabit, one going to your NVR and one going to the ISP, or router, firewall. It depends on your installation. So once again, FS728TP. There's a few different iterations of that model. Check it out. Like I said, they might have it at Micro Center. So hopefully that answers that question. Looks like we're finishing up here. You know, we've been on for almost an hour. Definitely doesn't feel like it. You know, we will adjust the time next week. Maybe we'll start at 7 again, but we'll get feedback from, you know, people that have been logged in. So, you know, we appreciate you checking out our live stream. We're done with questions for now, but if there's anything that we haven't touched on that you maybe want to see next week, or even if you just have a general question regarding our product line, you know, contact us. Jessica does a great job. I have access to email for wherever I am, so if I'm in town or out of the country, I can still answer email. And we have a couple other technicians that can help Jessica along in asking and getting some technical answers. So please, you know, give us a call. Our phone number, our main phone number is area code 914-338-8639. We're at Empire Security Cameras at gmail.com. And we don't get a lot of walk-ins, but if you happen to be in North Carolina and you're at the beach, give us a buzz and stop by. We can show you some of the stuff that we're working on, some of the prototypes. Like I said, that's it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it's been informative. If we left anyone's questions out, it was absolutely accidental. We tried to answer every single question. I think we did. So please, let us know what you think, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.